I loved Power Glove.
Come with me if you want to live.
I loved Power Glove.
No time for time travel.
Hey everyone, this is No Time for Time Travel again, and this is me, Tony, and Kwok. And today we're actually having a very special guest today. We are interviewing the CEO of Well Told Entertainment, Sam Warner. Hi Sam, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thank you guys for having me on. I'm excited. This is my first podcast experience, so I'm happy to be sharing this with you. I'm nervous. I'm excited. Just happy to be here.
Yeah. We are trying to be as chill as possible, just like our regularly scheduled.
You've been great. You've been great so far.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about the new game coming up, the Foglands. But before we get into that, right? I just want to ask you a little bit more about you, Sam Warner.
Sure. Yes. The
What
most
is your
interesting man in the world. Yeah. Right.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess just to get to know you a little bit better, what's kind of your background and how did you get into the gaming industry?
Yeah, wow. It's kind of surreal being asked that question because I feel like it was just yesterday I was asking other people that question. Like, how the hell do I get in and make video games? But mostly because I've always wanted games. I feel like since I picked up a Lego for the first time, I was like, wow, oh my God, I can build worlds. And then, discovering games and kind of getting into that as a kid. Yeah, I think I was just so enraptured at the idea of a clockwork universe inside of a Game Boy, or just something you could take with you. I felt like there's just so much potential for storytelling and creating fun, making people happy. And then I went to school for digital arts. I went to Chapman University with actually a lot of the people that I founded Well Told with. So we all kind of graduated together. And I found myself at that time, I was way more into art and I think the design side of things, but I ended up having to do quite a lot of programming. And so I found myself basically by the end of college with this really sort of breadth of knowledge about games that I think it's probably helped me be, a better leader, a little bit more of I can comprehend kind of the different corners and aspects of game development. And then I figure it's probably worth mentioning for anyone curious. My first thing I ever did in the game industry was I was a QA intern at Camouflage. They make Republic, Iron Man VR. It's probably something else new that I'm forgetting. They were a great team to be a part of, and you don't often hear a lot of people intern as a QA person, but I just was like, I got to get my foot in the door. I got to do anything to try and make games.
Oh, that's awesome. So I guess being an avid, you're pretty much an avid gamer yourself then at some point.
Oh yeah.
What kind of games did you enjoy?
Oh, it's a hard question. It's an easy question. I can just start listing games, but I think my own philosophy is I really like games that do something new or something really well. And then kind of a sub priority is things that focus on characters or games that have really great loops. So I guess the ones that I've written down because I didn't want to panic when you asked me this question. But I really liked Vampire Survivors recently. I put hundreds of hours into that game. I've probably over 1,000 in RimWorld. I've beaten Road Warden, which I hugely recommend. It's a narrative RPG with amazing music. I listen to that soundtrack constantly. I just finished Resident Evil 8. That game is a dumpster fire, amazing, chaotic experience that I loved every second of, in the best way, kind of a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
And then the weird thing like Loop Hero or Kitten's Game, these kind of weird niche fringe of the genre sort of experiences.
Yeah, no, I think I totally share your similar interests in terms of indie games, because when you mentioned Loop Hero and Vampire Survivors, okay, yeah, that's definitely my jam.
Right? You just lose yourself in those games. They don't really mess with story, even though it's there. I think in both those games somewhat, but they've doubled down on the juiciest, tightest loop. It's just so satisfying. I love those games.
Yeah, it's really great because like you said, it's just it's very simple, but their core loop is so simple and fun and addicting.
Right,
you just lose hours on end, and it's just wow. I remember with Vampire Survivor, I was I saw a video of it. I was wow, there's something I'll probably lose hours in.
Yeah,
I was oh no, I lost hours in. I knew what I was getting into.
See, that's so funny. I had a friend, one of our lead engineer at Well Told, he was like, Sam, you got to play this game. And he showed me this thing that looks like it was made in like Unity 3. Like it just looks, when it came out, that game looked like real rough. And I was like, why are you showing me this? This game doesn't, it looks like this is is this a demo? Do you know the person that made this game? And he was like, no. It's just a really good game. So I, downloaded it. And yeah, lo and behold, 100 hours later, I was just like, when's the next update? I want to get that next weapon. I want to get that next character. Like, give me more. And it's been a great drip feed. Like the marketing team and the development team over there, they really know what their community wants. They just keep adding really cool stuff.
And I think to go off that, like what I really enjoyed, I might be wrong, but I think that was done by like one developer.
Yeah. Or close to, yeah.
Yeah, it's like very small, super small team. And what they did that I enjoyed was like they didn't have any of like those big game company like buy extra DLC sort of thing where there's an update. Like, okay, here's like 5 more characters, here's all this extra stuff, and it's all free. And just like it's like the games back then where you buy a package and you get the whole package rather than like here's like the core game. It has like 1 level, and then the DLC will come out in like 2 weeks. That'll cost you another $50.
Yeah,
and then that's level 2. Until then, you're like, okay, well, I guess so. You're just buying like sequences, and to see a game done like that in a state of, I would say, like polished in the sense of gameplay.
Yeah,
and also being able to accommodate for like all the players, like the mindset, like okay, we get a full game and it's affordable. It's like $3 or something like that.
Yeah,
I was like, you get $3 for all this stuff, and it's just like free updates for like everything. And the next time, and I think they're coming up with a not DLC, but like a version or like a second one or something like that.
I think is it a sequel? The press around that game is just nuts because I'm pretty sure I saw that they're trying to make a TV show. I like they like, and then like you said, it's just every time there's an update, Kotaku, all these places just pick it up, they run with it. They're like, oh my god, more Vampire Survivors! It's just a hit in the best, the clearest definition of the term. And I think it's probably like the dream of every indie developer to find that. And maybe I don't speak for everybody, but I think you look at games like Deep Rock Galactic or for a while like RimWorld, or obviously Vampire Survivors, and it's these games that have super great loops, super expandable loops, almost like begging to just have DLC added to them. But because they treat their community with so much respect, they just kind of keep adding to the game, and it by word of mouth, the like value proposition of that game gets spread to so many other people. And so you just end up having kind of a steady stream of people trying your game because they know you care about it and you keep it. And the other one, like Stardew Valley, that's another one. It's just very, very earnestly loving and developing this game for a community that loves it, if not more, just as much as that developed. It's really cool to see.
While you guys are talking about that, I was favoriting that on my Steam list.
It's so good. Everyone should play Vampire Survivors.
It's very simple. For listeners who don't know what it is, look it up. But it's essentially just kind of like very rough pixel art where your characters move up, down, left, right, and you're surrounded by enemies just slowly encroaching you. You just kill them with like some special random moves. Shoots, like you don't really control much. Most of the moves or most of like the attacks are automated. So you just move around and dodge, and you just kill them. They drop loot, and you upgrade loot, and you get random thing. It just goes on for hours. You're like, wow, how did I lose 8 hours? I do the whole day.
I think the aesthetic is like vaguely Castlevania also. So there's just this little nostalgia kick every time, something happens. It's a great package. I really like it.
It reminds me of like a combination of like Smash TV and Raiden Fighters or Donpachi and just like all that stuff mixed together. And I'm looking at the video from Steam, and it's just like very satisfying to even see that happen.
So I think that's what hooked me, is like maybe it's not like it's very indie. It's a very indie game. It's a lot of just simple sprites kind of like moving around the screen, but the sort of spectacle of what might your build, how devastating could your build be, that's something that they really got right from the very beginning. It's really cool to see.
I think one thing that I kind of enjoy was just like seeing the evolution of an indie game, like and how much they progressed. Like obviously, they started out as in small indie game, and then it grew, and then people knew about it. And then with like the sequel and everything, I saw like they had like a marketing team or something where they had like animated stuff, like really well done animation and everything, just to market the thing, almost like Dead Cells sort of style.
Right.
And I was like, wow, I'm so proud of them. Like they grew from such like a small game to like getting tons of hits from like a lot of streamers and like gamers.
Yeah.
And now they're moving on to like something big, where they actually have animated like trailers for the next series, and like you said, Sam, like potential like web series or just like TV show sort of thing. And it's like, wow, I'm so happy, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of at that point, it takes a lot of work. I don't want to minimize it, but it's sort of like an if you build it, they will come. Like there's already such a fan base, so many people that are just clamoring for more of that Vampire Survivors energy, that, you know, capitalizing on that or expanding that brand so that you're really giving your community more to engage with is like a really, it's just really good indie development. And I feel like a even bigger one for that is like Inner Sloth's Among Us. Like obviously that has permeated every single corner of the universe. Among Us is everywhere. But you know, that started as such a tiny little thing that that then, you know, what became beloved over time, and then the demand for it grew such that there was VR games and there's TV shows. If I don't know, I mean, it's a huge brand now. So yeah, it's really cool to see small devs get hits like that. That's the dream.
Yeah, and you know, speaking of about devs, of course, we're here to talk about you know, Well Told and Well Told Entertainment, right? So, you know, like, can you kind of give a little bit of like a history about, you know, how did that start? Like when you said you co-founded with a bunch of friends, right?
Yes. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, can you kind of give us a little bit? That was an interesting story. I kind of read a little bit about it on Well Told's blog about like, you know,
who are we?
Who are you guys, and doing things that, you know, most companies or people tell you not to do. Because I felt the same way. So I run an escape room. I co-founded one with my friends as well.
What? That's like the dream. I want to talk about that. You sure you guys want to talk about Well Told? I want to know more about the escape. That's okay, but that's really cool. So you do that, and so you're familiar with the kind of taking something from nothing to something. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So like for you guys, like how did that kind of start? Like when did you decide? Like why did you decide to start up? You know, Well Told, or how did it come about? Was there like a whole one day it just happened, or it kind of like grew over time? Like how did that work?
It's like a lot of things. There's like so many sort of vectors, I feel like, that led to the moment. You know, there's like the silly things, like being in college with a group of friends that I really care about and that I still get to see every day because we started a company, and, you know, just joking at the time, like, oh, what if we started a game company? Wouldn't that be silly? Ha ha. And then we did. Or like looking more strategically at how we started Well Told and describing it in an intellectual way as we saw a gap in the market for character-driven experiences in emerging technologies, and we decided to capitalize. I'm not going to give you that line, because really the truth is we decided to use the word innovative as a replacement for knowledgeable when we started Well Told. We did not know how to make video games. It's like starting a band when nobody knows how to play their instruments. We were just like, all right, we're a band now. And so, but what we did have, I think, was like a really strong set of ethics and morals and sort of like creative ambitions that we did want to bring together and keep a group of people together. So we were the ambition there, I think, was we don't really care about AR and VR. We might not even really care about games. That's why we're called Well Told Entertainment. But what we really do care about is having a great group, a great culture to make creative projects with that we believe. And I think that at the core, like, not to mince words, is really probably the strongest driving force at Well Told. Obviously, we want our fans to know that we 100% care about Foglands and games and making those things. But to make those things the way we want to make them, I think we have to have, we started with, anyway, a lot of respect for each other and wanting to make sure that we kind of carried each other through. As you know, starting in an escape room, kind of the rough and tumble, very capitalistic experience of starting a company. And then, you know, the last lens which isn't the fun lens. It's the lens that everybody doesn't want to talk about. It's sort of just like what problems exist in the media space, specifically in the game industry, that make it difficult for people to break into the game industry, which is a question that we started with kind of this, how did I get here? It was hard. I had some really bad experiences at some companies before I started Well Told with my friends. And I think they did too. I was just looking around, you get out of college, everybody has that question of like, what am I going to do when I grow up? And I think that we decided to sort of embrace that insecurity, start something ourselves, believe in and invest in ourselves a little bit, and try to just do our own thing in the face of these other studios that we had just had such kind of negative experiences with. And that I think that describes maybe the question you're asking, which is like, why did we start Well Told? The question of how we started Well Told is probably completely different. And I'll pause to, we don't need to go there, but that is like I don't want to neglect that there's a lot of, lot of blood, sweat, tears, and privilege that have gone into, I think, successfully starting a game company. And if we want to go there, we can. But obviously, yeah, we're just excited that we have had an opportunity to stay together and make the things that we believe in. Well Told. That's kind of why.
I think one thing that you mentioned that I found kind of interesting, because it seems like after college, you guys went your separate ways, try to break into the industry, and then somehow like you guys came back together. Like, so I guess, did you guys just kept in contact with each other all this time, or?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we all lived together. A lot of us, or very close together. And so when we came, I think the chain of events was, I mentioned to somebody at our university, like, hey, I think it would be fun to just start our own company. Like, wouldn't that be weird? And they were like, hey, we have this like kind of empty building that's just full of workspaces, and we don't know how to use it or what to do with it, or if people are going to use it at all. What if you just put a desk in there and pull the team together? And I had this really like early job. I was like making AR VR kids books. So like leveraging some technology, you point your phone at a book and like 3D stuff pops off the page. And so I tapped Jen, who's our animation director and kind of one of our like story supervisors, and Mark, who was my partner on Foglands as our thesis in school. And I just said like, hey guys, do you want to just work on this gig with me? We have this weird office space at our alma mater. Like, do we want to try? And they were both almost like instantly like, yes, yes, please, God. And I think at the time, yeah, we were all kind of just working odd jobs, just trying to, make rent and stay in the LA area. And so then, with more and more of these kind of projects, we pulled more and more people in, and we went from pretending to be a game company to kind of pretending a little less to be a game company. I still feel like we're pretending a game company, but yeah, that's kind of
Where did the name come from? Well Told.
Oh, good question. Yeah, it's largely because of a family member of the studio's original founding. He was our mentor and supervisor at Chapman. His name is Bill Croyer. He's also the director of Fern Gully. So he's just like the smartest dude in entertainment, and he really just kind of coached us from being complete noobs about storytelling to like how valuable and important storytelling is in entertainment products, whether that's games or film or TV or whatever. But one of the things that he kind of, it's a chain really, but he would always say, we're here to make great stories well told, or good stories well told. And it just having a good story did not matter as much if you didn't tell that story well. The articulation, the expression of that story matters as much as just saying, I have a really cool idea for a story, and here it is. And that actually comes from Andrew Stanton, the director of Finding Nemo and some of the other Pixar films. He's a huge name at Pixar and just in the animation industry in general. And even that then comes from Mark Twain. The quote there, I have it written down because I forget it sometimes, and then I seem silly that I don't know like where our company name come from. But it's I like a good story well told. That is the reason I am sometimes forced to tell them myself. And I love the entrepreneurial spirit in that statement. I love the idea of taking control of doing what you want, saying what you want, and not really letting anyone stop you. And so in that way, I think at the end of the day, Well Told isn't that we do tell good stories. People are going to rip us apart when this game comes out, probably, and be like, yeah, it's not a good story. Why are you guys even called Well Told? That's dumb. But it's an aspiration. It's something that we try to do all the time, is to tell a good story well.
That's really cool. That's a really awesome kind of like origin story of like.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
of,
like Well
That's
Told.
sweet. That's really sweet. Thank you.
I'm
Yeah,
quite
it's
surprised you
been
don't have that like postered on like your wall or in your room or anything, just to always remember it or something like that.
Yeah, well, I think that's why we decided to call the name, or name the company after that ambition. It's impossible for us to forget, and at times we do. At times we're like, what are we doing? And we kind of just have to come back to the fact that stories do matter to us, even if we're making games with a lot of action or a lot of gameplay, and we can't neglect that. Yeah.
I think having worked with Jen, the animation director on thing, like we talked about it, and I think it was great to hear her, I guess, like share the same thing.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
where it's just like, oh yeah, where she mentioned that she always tried to get a good story in, or like good narrative in to like the gameplay moments, and have the player experience those moments well.
Right.
And it's great to just hear like you, Sam, as well as Jen, and probably the others as well, sharing the same belief, and it's resonating with everybody that works inside the company.
Yeah. It does seem to resonate. I mean, you always have, I think, in a team, a spread of people that are like, I love gameplay, I could care less about story, or like story is everything and I want that, and I don't really care about like the action verbs that I might do in the game. But I think even going back to like Vampire Survivors, there's just enough like drip feed, cohesion, lore, tone, theme, whatever you want to call it, that sort of ties it all together. It's important not to neglect that there is a narrative, and probably in every single game, even like original Mario or Pac-Man. There's something there that you're like, what the heck is this? Why am I doing this? Somebody explain to me why I'm a yellow dot eating other dots. And I think for our team, we just try to strike that balance of listening to people that prioritize those things, story or gameplay, differently, and then bring them together. That's like the ultimate dream, is if we can do that well at some point in the lifetime of Well Told, we'll have I think we'll really found a path to making like successful video games by our own definition. Who cares what everyone else says? Just we have brought narrative and gameplay together in a satisfying way. Boom, we can die happy. I think everybody at the team kind of feels that way.
That sounds pretty awesome. It's essentially just being like the Pixar for games at this stage.
That's a high bar, man. Don't set me up for that. Yeah, no, I can see the point. That it's I was actually just talking to one of my our lead technical designer, and we were talking about our next games and kind of what we want to make next. And one of the things that came up was how we evolve like our internal like pillars, things that we believe in, just as we've learned so much from Foglands. And one of the things that we really want to figure out how to sort of crystallize is, always be asking, where's the heart? And I feel like you brought up Pixar. That's something that like their best movies have, that sort of like message, theme, again, lore. I don't know. It's a confluence of so many things, but it's a heart. It's not necessarily preachy, but it's something that you learn or that you reflect on. You ask yourself questions like, what am I, when I experience this film or this game or whatever. And so, that I think we definitely want to take from Pixar, aside from everything Andrew Stanton has ever said. We'll keep taking quotes from him and naming things after his quotes, but also the heart thing. Yeah.
That sounds great. I guess
yeah.
go ahead, Johnny.
Oh yeah. So So now we're kind of into that whole like talking about, you know, developing a great game. We can actually talk about Foglands, the Foglands.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So yeah, like okay, so for those of you who don't know, the Foglands was recently announced back in February with a trailer, teaser trailer, and it's going to be available for it was advertised for PSVR 2.
Yes.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about the game before we get into some, you know, more details about it?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So we're kind of at a very high level describing it as like a story-rich action adventure game. It happens to be a roguelike, roguelite, I should say. Wow, you guys, you have to edit out roguelike. I can't be seen saying roguelike instead of roguelite. That's ridiculous. I'm just kidding. But and it's hard to know the difference. We're making a roguelite though, and it's a kind of action driven experience, but there's also like tons of story also, you know, present. And one of the things that I guess, you know, we point to things that inspire the game are, you know, Hades is a great action roguelite experience. I don't know if you've played a lot of the VR stuff, but we keep coming back to Gorn, which is sort of like a physics-driven, very violent gladiator game. And then, of course, like Half-Life Alyx, that's a big point of reference. And then, at least for like kind of the immersive style roguelite combo-matic stuff that you kind of expect out of a game like that, we come back to Noida and Prey Moon Crash, which was also sort of like a first-person roguelite. So yeah, it's kind of a combination of all those things. The big focus I think that we have in combat, you know, if we're digging a little deeper, is on what we call bar fight combat. And so we showed this off in the trailer, like, you know, you've got guns and you've got, you know, you can punch stuff. But we really want the player to be focusing on how can they use their environment to better achieve victory in these sort of like no holds barred combat encounters with monsters and other people out there in the Fogland. And so that just means that, you know, you're picking up bottles and smashing them over people's heads, or, you know, punching people to knock them down, and then taking out your gun, using some of your limited ammo to take out a couple other guys that might be shooting at you. So it's definitely like just trying to get into that kind of a little bit of that cowboy fantasy. And then I guess I can touch really quickly on the story, or just like what you're even doing in this game. You play as a runner, which is sort of a self-made identity, player fantasy for this game. It takes place in a post-apocalyptic world far away. And as a runner, you're sort of responsible for a community that is surviving in the Foglands. And the fog, if you breathe it, it turns you into a crazy monster. It's transformed all of the planet since whenever it emerged. And so you as a runner are kind of like this Tomb Raider cowboy peacekeeper that's out to save their community from a ginormous worm. That's basically the plot. Stop the big worm. And it definitely goes off the rails from there.
That sounds awesome. How did like the name Fogland? Like obviously, like it's like the fog and the land and everything. But what's the origin of it? Like, what's the story? How did you guys come up with the story and whatnot, or the gameplay?
Yeah, so that's a there's a lot of different ways that it really like came into existence. I want to make sure I call out my partner Mark. He's one of our co-founders as well. He's been very much like the creative driver of the universe, and all the wildest things that kind of come out of it. I'm pretty sure every enemy in the game sort of like tumbled out of his head and into the arms of like our wonderful team, you know, bringing them to life. But the like very first origin of like, what if there was a world covered in fog? You know, I live in Seattle. I grew up in Seattle, and I just distinctly remember, I think it was in like early college, I'm standing at the bottom of a hill and it's just super foggy. And I was standing at, you know, looking up at a bunch of stoplights, you know, that are just kind of like clicking on and off in the fog. And you can't see anything because it's so foggy, except for these glowing, what look like eyes high above you. And I just was like, this is a really cool setting. I want to be here in a game and have like cowboy music and spooky monsters crawling around. And then, you know, just to point at some actual like concrete things that kind of, you know, where did I take that curiosity with fog? I absolutely love Frank Darabont's The Mist. That movie is awesome. and just so inspirational, I think, for the like what could be around the next corner that's coming out, I think, in Foglands. Another movie is like Once Upon a Time in the West. If you bring that up with Jen, she'll talk your ear off about that movie. I think it's one of our favorites collectively on the team. And then just a lot of us come from places where there's just like a weirdly high connection with water and just like kind of those earthly land-based connections. So like I'm from Seattle, Mark's from Oregon, our CTO's from Florida. It's just I think it's kind of in our DNA how much we love just the different forms that water takes. And so we just really felt like naming the game and really fleshing the world out of the Foglands was a great way to sort of bucket an untold number of stories that could take place in this release. It just feels like it's starting, and it kind of maybe always has. It feels like a reflection of home, maybe. But my home also doesn't have scary monsters in it. At least I don't think so. Maybe my daughter, maybe my like 2-year-old daughter. Yes, she's the scary monster in the Foglands that is real life. Yeah.
All the enemies are based off of her, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Her screeches and her roars. Yeah, exactly.
You just record her at home, just throw it in the game.
I've sneakily pushed our Rachel, our sound designer, a couple of recordings. I think just like, hey, if you want to use this, go for it. And nobody wants to listen to a baby scream, but maybe that's what makes it good. I don't know.
Speaking of sound, I think when I first saw the trailer, there were lots of positive comments about like the music of it.
Oh yeah,
and is that like
so good?
Original music, or is that something based off somewhere else? Or
yeah. It's absolutely original music. But I am going to first and foremost say Jason Gallaty is our composer. He is a genius. He did the soundtrack for Kena Bridge of Spirits. And he, he's basically been a part of Foglands and sort of the creative team for Foglands from kind of the beginning. We were neighbors for a long time, and then I actually, we get to kind of just connect over like our love of music and our love of nature and stuff. And so Jason, I think, has really taken maybe some of the more I don't know if it's one-dimensional, flatter depictions of like westerns and post-apocalypse, things that maybe feel like there's been a traditional way to express those universes, but then he's really applied a lot of his own creative talents and creative vision to what can you do with a post-apocalyptic Western universe. And so, I mean, obviously you heard it, hip hop, flamenco, noise, and drone. There's just a lot going on inside of our soundtrack. And one of the coolest things I can share about Jason's process is he actually went to Vermont for a few months. I think it was in the fall of last year, so 2022. And he went to this place called Anarchestra, where they had basically like a warehouse full of instruments made out of like old airplane engines or like crazy drums made out of like rusting machines. And he kind of refabbed, or what's the word, rehabilitated, I guess, a lot of these instruments, and then did full capture recordings of. And so our soundtrack, of course, it has like traditional banjo, guitar, trumpet, all these wonderful, like traditional Western sounding instruments, but is backed up by an instrument made of apocalyptic trash, which I think is probably the coolest. For me, it's the coolest part of our soundtrack. And then there's some other really, really great things that Jason's brought to the table, and some other really great collaborators that he's worked with, that have basically just elevated Foglands and its soundtrack beyond what I or really Mark and I could have ever imagined it would be.
Yeah, it was so funny reading the comments because like the theme music in the trailer was amazing, and everyone kept like asking, "Oh, what is the name of it?" And of course, it's not out yet, right?
Right.
So, but it was really funny to
custom.
see that. Yeah.
Definitely.
So like the music is so cool. The other thing I want to mention too is like the character designs. Like,
Sure.
In the trailers, a lot of it felt, there's a lot of innovative like creatures, and then there's also some familiarity. Like for me, like I'm a big Mortal Kombat fan, so I noticed some elements that kind of remind me of,
Sure.
Mortal Kombat. I think you might know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we get the flat. What's his name? Lao Kang? No,
Kung Lao, yeah.
Kung Lao. There we go.
Yeah.
Wow, butchered that. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very
Yeah.
strong character designs.
Yeah. So like was that character design like how did you guys come up with that? Like was that kind of everybody had input, or was there a specific design team? Like how does that come about?
Yeah, so I used to draw characters in like the Foglands universe all the time, and it's pretty easy. You just put a trench coat and a gas mask on somebody, and it's like, boom, they're in Foglands, easy. And I think as we sort of pushed past that, and over the years, obviously, the aesthetics, I think, of Apocalyptica has changed or been, it's just well trodden ground. You know, you look at Fallout, you look at early versions of what Fortnite is. You know, there's definitely a common, or Stalker, or there's just tons of games that do that aesthetic. What ended up happening was, you know, as more and more people kind of fell in love with what Foglands was and what it could become, we just had more and more people drawing and adding to that universe. So there's characters that we haven't even announced that are pushing the boundaries of what I think you would see in like a Western post-apocalyptic game. Maybe the poster child for that, at least that people have seen so far, is the Stranger. He's weird. He's the guy with the hat. That's what he just called the Stranger. He's got no other name in this game, and he is very enigmatic, almost, you know, magical. I would say, but he walks this line of like, is he? Where does he fit in this universe? Is he an ally? Is he a puppet master? Is he more nefarious? Is he dark? And I think that expanding the universe to that kind of character rather than just a bunch of dudes in trench coats and gas masks, that came from outside of and outside of Mark. So I think that the expansion of the universe and the color that's really been added to the universe is in large part thanks to our amazing team. They really like brought out that sort of Miyazaki-esque breadth of emotional range, so that we aren't just looking at a bunch of sad people running around being sad and shooting each other. There's all this range of levity and comedy and horror and drama and earnestness, I think, in our message, in the story and characters of Fogland.
Yeah. Yeah. Another like you said about that whole feeling of it, right? Like I also felt like not only was the character design, you know, super cool and just gave you that feeling of like this is like really cool, unique space, but also like that the voice of the Stranger was really cool too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was wondering too, like for the voice actors, like how did that come about? Did you interview voice actors and hire them? And was there direction on, you know, how these voices sounded, or was it
Yeah.
kind of like more the actors doing their own thing?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I can't stress enough, for a new-ish studio, or a studio that, you know, has helped make a lot of games, and this is our first game that we're really, you know, big, and we're working with some really cool partners and all that stuff. We had to generate like the entire pipeline for VO, voiceover, and voice actor management, and all the technical stuff that goes into making sure that our characters animate and emit sound, and the subtitle and the words, all of that is sort of like coming together in the proper and kind of clean way. So all of the genius for making that happen, thankfully, is outside of my hands. I had almost nothing to do with that. What I definitely did try my best to do is create safe spaces, and just time and kind of boundaries for people like our lead writer, Anna Webster. She's incredible. She is the most amazing person, and knocked the story out of the park with everything that we really tried to do. And, you know, a lot of it really starts with her and her amazing words. But then from there, we really have to find actors and actresses that embody those characters, you know, that she, you know, when she puts pen to page, that we're finding people that sort of match those. And so, yeah, the Stranger, immediately we were like, well, we got to get Gianni. We got to get him in here and do some lines there. And he was a perfect fit. Easy. Our narrator, who you haven't heard yet, who is actually like an older version of the character that you play as. He's played by Miles Cranford. He's been in Hollywood forever, and he actually voiced the original cinematic that Mark and I made when we were students in college. That was the first thing we ever made for Foglands. And so when we asked him to come back, he was like, before the first sentence ended, he was like, "Yeah, I'm in. Like, yeah, just put me in the game, coach." But then there've also been some really tough to find actors and actresses. Our most difficult character to find was actually for a character Shandine. You saw her in the trailer. She's kind of trapped in that like weird liminal orange space and says Jim for like half a second before we cut to something else. We really wanted to find somebody of Navajo descent to play that character, and it just turns out that it's very difficult. I shouldn't say difficult. It takes quite a lot of time to find someone that fits that profile, but that also fits the character as written. And so we took a lot of time to find the right person for that role. We're really, really happy with the person that we found. She's amazing, and I think really carries a lot of that heart that we were talking about earlier. That we want to make sure is present in the game.
Yeah, so I guess like you were mentioning like because it's like your first game or like Well Told's first game, and you partner everything. Like I noticed this with PlayStation.
Yeah.
How did that partnership go about? Like, did you approach them? Did they approach you? What's the process like with that?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it a little earlier. I feel like a lot of what we've done at Well Told has been thanks to luck and thanks to privilege and thanks to I just kind of getting up after every time we fall over, and we want to make games the way we want to make them with the people we want to make them with. And so, it's been a long time, a lot of years. Well Told has been around since 2012. Maybe was when we really officially turned into an LLC. So yeah, we're like somehow at like 11 years of operation, and that this is the first game that we're really making ourselves. And I think to the luck point, I'll point at Callum Underwood and Gwen Foster. They're two people that we reached out to kind of just be like, hey, we're a studio that doesn't know how the game industry works. Like, can we know we want to make games. We know we have this cool property. We've got a really great prototype for it. Can you help us find somebody that'll help us fund it? And the two of them coached me with a lot of pitching, coached a lot of our co-founders with sort of like how we architect the universe to be a little bit more in line with sort of the modern day demands of maybe what the industry itself is looking for. And then we had an opportunity to get down, and sit in front of Sony, specifically Greg Rice and Sean Benson over there, and just sort of like do the song and dance pitch of, hey, this is our weird Foglands game. Do you guys want to make this? And they were absolutely excited to see to give us the opportunity to make that game. And then a big part of that also is just the like that maybe people don't talk about too much is like navigating those deal terms. And it's as a small studio, it's kind of always been a little bit of like a high five and a handshake and then money shows up. But we really wanted to make sure that all of the terms were structured well. And so again, Callum and Gwen and our kind of business development team at Well Told, we just worked with Sony to figure out exactly how long we would need and what our resources were, and so we finally got that started. God, that was like over 2 years ago. We're coming up on our launch at some point this year. I should know how long it's been. But yeah, we've just really loved working with Sony and working on their kind of new hardware. But we got the game funded with them and started development before PSVR 2 was even announced. It's sort of like we walked into the room on kind of a hunch more than anything that they were working on that hardware. And so I think we just were taking a big swing at, hey, these are the things that we believe in as a game studio. Do you guys like this too? And luckily, there was a huge match to be made there between us and Sony. So yeah, we're really lucky, really happy to be working with them, and it's been pretty smooth sailing so far. It's a great group over there.
That's nice. But I guess that you were saying like you had PSVR wasn't really out yet. So did you pitch to them that was like gonna be a VR game, or did they say we want a VR game?
So at the time, it was a lot more like, okay, who's funding VR content? And it was Meta and actually maybe they were Facebook still, or Oculus at the time. I don't really remember. But it was them, and it was Sony, and anyone else that was funding VR content was funding stuff at very, very small numbers, and for very tight timelines. And so we kind of just went to Sony thinking, hey, why not? Like we've got grand plans here. Let's see if this sticks. And it kind of came out through the process that they were looking at taking that next step with their hardware. And it just lined up for us to sort of get in early, understand what their goals were, and then, even kind of modify some of the plans for our experience to fit a little bit better on their platform. It was not much. It was really, if I can be optimistic, I think it was only improvements that we made thanks to what the PSVR 2 is possible, or makes possible, because of its hardware and its affordances. Yeah.
So
Yeah, go
guess
ahead.
I have a related question. So
Yeah.
we did ask our listener community if they had any specific questions for Foglands. This kind of relates to what you said from Barry White. That's his name on but
Barry White, yes.
Barry White from the Super Best Friend Video Game Sleepover podcast. He says, as an owner of an original PSVR, what are some ways that Well Told Games is leveraging the PSVR 2 hardware for the Foglands?
Yeah, this is a super good question, and I don't want to be vague, because I told you guys I'm not here to to wave flags that don't have a whole lot of substance on them. But I think there are a couple of things that we want to play a little closer to the chest about how we're expressing that hardware. I won't. Those are just little things that are small. But the big thing that I want to talk about that we're leveraging from PSVR 2 is something that we've called intention targeting with eye tracking. So when we pitched to Sony, we had this game feature that was sort of like a Zelda Z target, where like you hold a button down and you like lock on a character, or I guess Dark Souls, it does that too. But we really like the affordance in VR of leveraging where your head is looking as like a gameplay verb, because obviously, where your head is aiming is where you're seeing. And so we can use that data to sort of drive additional systems. We want to use head tracking with traditional VR headsets to sort of decide, what am I targeting right now? And then what we do with PSVR 2 is actually leverage where your eyes are looking to determine what you're targeting. And so where you look is where you are going to either, if you look at that wrench and you want to pick it up, you can look at it and then press the grab button, and that wrench flies into your hand. If you want to then throw that wrench at that enemy that's kind of like halfway across the room, like I'm just gonna like baseball pitch this thing, as long as you're looking at that enemy and you kind of just do the throw gesture, we calculate the arc to get it there and just thwonk that guy. And that's sort of just to back up the player fantasy of you're a runner, you're a badass, capable fighter. And really that kind of I guess that like bit of hand holding that we do is to smooth out some of the friction of throwing in VR, and also leverage this really powerful new technology of eye tracking. The other stuff that we're doing with eye tracking with other pieces of the PSVR 2 hardware, I think are more fun to leave for players as they experience it, as little tiny mysteries. But I'd say that's like a back of the box sort of feature that we're really using PSVR 2 complete.
That is really, really cool.
I'm glad you think so.
Yeah, because like I've heard just in the some vague articles here and there about the eye tracking feature, but don't really know like how it is implemented. So that's really cool to see like how you guys are implementing that for the Foglands.
Yeah, thank you.
Man, that's crazy. Just imagining like how much more immersive it can be with eye tracking.
Yeah,
So
it really is. I think it's just super nice to know that there's more data as a developer we can use to create a more immersive experience. And we had all these grand plans, and we still do, to go deeper. But I think that when the rubber hits the road on game development and you really start having to shave things down, we all really rallied around like, hey, throwing a wrench at a guy in a bar fight combat game should just be really cool. Like that should just feel awesome. And we have had, set a few things aside in order to make sure that that's really good. But if anything, that's just, more ammo for the next one. So yeah, we're just really, really fond of all of the different affordances that headset gives us.
So when you guys were testing out that feature, like I just imagine like a whole bunch of people just lining up and want to throw like wrenches at random things from far distance and just have competition. It's like just to
Yeah.
test it out. It's like, oh, it sounds like really fun. Just do that.
It is it's kind of a blessing and a curse. We call it intention targeting because obviously what we're trying to do is sort of capture what you want to do. Like what are you intending to do in our video game? And then how do we make sure that that thing happens? And the cause and effect of I point a gun at a guy and shoot is really familiar. But the cause and effect of I'm trying to throw a wrench at someone and it doesn't always get there is kind of unsatisfying. And so we were like, okay, well, we're going to just make sure that we remove the unsatisfying part, make sure that the thing gets there. And as soon as we did that, you're spot on. People were like, I want to throw a wrench at that target. I want to throw a wrench at that light. I want to throw a wrench at that other wrench. And you just start to get into this design space that's completely new where you're like, what are we supposed to do with all of the scope here? So, it's something we've probably we've had to limit. We're not the biggest team in the world, but we want people to express that agency. We want people to have fun with it. And we think we're on the right track with how it feels. So we'll see how much more we get to kind of push into it with post-launch and other stuff that we.
I'm really excited for that feature because I'm just thinking about like all the VR games that I've played. I have a Quest 1. It's still old school.
Sure. Yeah, it's valid. Yeah.
But like, I get frustrated every time there's a point where I have to throw something because I'm like, this doesn't feel like throwing in real life. I have to calibrate myself to be like, I got to throw in this virtual world with a weird motion that I'm not used to.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it just seems like it's weird how I'm excited to get my hands on that new throwing motion with eye tracking.
Yeah, right. It does require both. Because like I said, we had it set up where you just used your head direction. But there's so much difference between just like kind of the really broad angle of where's my head versus like I'm like looking at this thing and we know you're looking at this thing. So all of a sudden the like targeting detail that you can get out of a feature like this is it's just huge. It's like it's sort of like going from like the N64 to the GameCube. I'm old school. I don't know. That's my barometer. it's a big leap, I think, in hardware capability.
Yeah, that's a really cool feature. Are there any other unique gameplay elements that in the game that you want to share as well, besides like those eye tracking?
Sure. Yeah, I'll share some. So like I keep saying, we've been really trying to prioritize bar fight combat. And one of the critiques that I know we saw in the trailer is like, oh, it's another shooting game. And yeah, there are guns in our game, but there's not really like gun modding. There's a range of weapons. You just like a pistol, there's a shotgun, there's a machine gun, there's some really weird things that we also put in there too. But it's not, we don't want it to just be about shooting. We want there to be sort of like a scarcity element to it. We want there to be a bit of survival horror. So you're not just walking into every room and just blowing everything away with your gun. And also we want to express builds that you can, get from our ability cards, that are like, I want to be punch guy this time, or I want to be throw guy this time, or I want to be shoot guy. It's all valid. We want people to play how they want to play. But the thing that I want to share that I am very proud of and very excited for people to see and find and do themselves is we have made it a feature so that when you damage enemies with different weapons, they apply like different knockout damage. And knockout damage you don't see, but it's basically like how close is this enemy to being like a ragdoll? Like you just doink, knock them out and then they're down for a few seconds and then they get back up. If you ragdoll an enemy, if you knock an enemy out and it hits other like breakable surfaces in the game, like tables, boxes, things like that, they just smash through all of that stuff. And so you just land a really satisfying right hook, which deals way more knockout damage than like a gun or something. You knock that enemy, tumbling head over heels into a pile of boxes and a table that's got some bottles on it. It all just like a Western movie just kind of explodes. And it's just like chaos everywhere. And then we also have like features where like you knock a guy into another guy and that deals damage. Like we really want it to feel like be the cowboy that you've always wanted to be and just, grab a bottle, smash it over a guy, knock him out, watch him tumble into a bunch of stuff. I don't know. I think it's going to present a very fun experience for people.
It sounds really fun. It sounds like I might just have to get like a PSVR 2 for this.
Oh golly, it's a
first of
very
all-
cool pice of hardware.
Yeah. First of all, I
I
got to
recommend
find the PS5, right? So
Yeah, right. Well, and even then, it's recently they're getting a little easier to find. But I
Yeah.
have I'll admit this on recording. I didn't have a PS5 personally until like maybe 5 months ago. So yeah, it's been tough. It's been tough out there to find one of those PS5s. So I feel your pain. Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
and we have another question from a listener too.
Sure.
His name is Sir Tater Tot.
What's
his name
up,
is-
Tater Tot?
Yeah, he's David J. Tate from the Super Best Friends video game sleepover podcast.
Nice.
He was also asking, what's the most surprising challenge you and your team had to face while developing the Foglands? And did anything turn out to be very easy to implement that you thought would be an absolute struggle?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's actually hard to answer. The hardest thing so far, I think, for us has been targeting the PSVR 2 and the Quest platform, like really at the same time. Both are incredible and both have their merits and both have their strengths and weaknesses. But the kind of brass tacks of it all is one of them runs on a PS5 and the other one runs on a Quest 2. There's a delta in the processing and rendering power of those platforms. And so targeting both of those as a team has been like, I think we're going to come out of it as sort of a bit of maybe a pioneer, I guess, in like shipping a game with both platforms targeted from day one. Because yeah, you're trying to reach for the sky with, you know, what you can render and what you can draw on a PS5. And then you're also trying to keep yourself in the realm of mobile friendly, you know, running on an Android device. What can we really accomplish with that hardware? And how do we keep that gameplay experience the same if we're going to change the content of the levels from platform to platform? That's been a big challenge. And then almost more difficult to answer is the easiest thing. Game development's really hard. It's like very hard. And so looking back at the years we've been working on this game, it's very hard to pinpoint something that was like, oh, yeah, that was easy. Because everything kind of feels like, wow, how did we even get here? But the thing that I kind of arrived on, maybe switching to Unreal from a primarily Unity studio was easier than I thought. I think it kind of was like in part because so much of our team was eager to make that transition from Unity to Unreal. So, you know, people were just sort of diving headfirst into making things like, can I do the same thing I could do in Unity? And we found now that we've worked in it for this whole game, it's where we want to be for the remainder of the games that we make. It's a great engine and it's a better fit for our team. So, I think that ended up being an easier transition than I expected. I thought there was going to be a lot more like crying about that, but it ended up being a pretty smooth jump.
That's surprising to hear. So my day job, I work in like electronic health record stuff. So
Yeah.
switching from one system to the other, so bad. Like it's always like, you know, resistance to change and then issues and all that. So it's surprising to me to hear that you went from Unity to Unreal, like completely different systems, right?
Completely incompatible, like in competition even. Yeah, they're like, there are obviously tons of philosophy and tons of learning that carries over, but when you're talking about engine syntax and you're talking about interface differences, there's just so many things that are different about those systems that even like duplicating an item. I'm gonna talk about this for a second. Duplicating an item in Unreal 4, you had to do Control W. Who does Control W for duplicate? Okay, it's Control D. It's always Control D. But it's okay. Tim did a tweet on this. Tim knows that he made a mistake. It's fine.
Yeah, it's cool to hear that everybody was on board. And yeah,
absolutely.
I wish I would hear that in my own day job, but that's almost
there's
always issues.
There's a couple things like we try. You mentioned earlier, like we're kind of more of a flat hierarchy. It's impossible to be truly flat hierarchy. I don't think anywhere is a flat hierarchy. I think there's moments in time where someone needs to stand up and say, hey, this is where we're going. And I think that was one of those moments where there definitely were a lot of people saying that, but it was important to me that we made a jump from what we saw as maybe software that we'd made games with a few times that had such reconcilable quirks, things that we just knew we weren't ever really going to get around, making a jump to something that we had source code for and that we were confident we could learn and build on as a foundation that would be extensible like into the future. I think I needed to just say, this is what we have to do. And then kind of Cortez burn the ships, like, all right, everybody uninstall Unity. Like there's a little bit of that, like leave your home behind and go somewhere new that was required. But I don't think at any point in time our team was like dragging their feet. Everybody was on board. It was really cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I think let's plug a little bit more about the game. Like, where can people go to learn more about the game, Sam? Sounds really cool.
That's important. We would love it if you gave us money and we gave you a video game. So eventually that's the goal. So let's do that. But you can follow us on our socials. You can go to welltold.io, and there's a whole bunch of links that you can jump out to there. Most of our marketing stuff and links to blogs is going to go through that page also. And then if you want to just be more up to date with sort of like the weirder ongoings of Well Told and the community that we are trying to build and working on building, go ahead and join our Discord. I think you just like that also has a link on our welltold.io page. We're going to be doing a lot more announcements and more posting in general soon. There's a few different events that we're looking to capitalize on to do some marketing. So stay tuned for those. But yeah, definitely hit us with a wish list on your preferred platform with Chan.
Awesome. So, thanks so much for, taking some time out of your day to be on this, tiny, independent, low reach podcast here.
No, I love it. I'm all about that. That's where we started. We get solidarity.
Yeah, it's so awesome to like get to talk to you and learn more about where you came from, where Well Told came from, and how the Foglands got started, and all the exciting things that's going to be coming out with the Foglands when it's released. To be respectful of your time, like thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I'll put the information for the game into our show notes for people to see, and we'll tweet about it too, so that they can find out more and learn more about the game and check out the listing and join your Discord.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And if I can really quickly just say thank you for anyone listening to this podcast and some more supporting creators that are independent, that are taking kind of a risk and making something weird and new. With our experience in VR, it's a great medium for immersion and storytelling. And it's just an honor to create content for people that are as avid and hungry an audience as the people that look for content like we're. So thanks a lot to those folks, and most important, thanks to the two of you for running. Thanks a lot, guys.
I loved Power Club.
Come with me if you want to live.
I loved Power Club.
No time for time travel.